Oh, Newcastle with a 2-0 win here. Frank, obviously you were keeping your eye on this one. Newcastle rising to the big occasion. Chelsea getting a man sent off. Their disciplinary record not looking good this season.
No, not looking good, but nothing to say about that. And that was a deserving red card. But I think if it works last week with Caicedo on the right side, I think the tactic today from Maresca wasn't a good one. And it's been showed and proved in the second half when Caicedo joined Fernandes and Lavia in the middle of the park. And Chelsea, even 10 against 11, have been better than, than Newcastle. And therefore, you can say that the first half, when they didn't play, even at 11 against 11 for 30 minutes, they barely showed anything. They tried to keep the ball, but they had no chances. But it's when second half, Maresca changed something that we didn't see Newcastle anymore. I was worried about, I said, what's wrong with Newcastle? Physically, they went down, they couldn't react. And I think they didn't overall deserve to win. Because what I saw from Chelsea in the second half proved that Chelsea could have done better and should have scored goals. And it could have been a 1-1. Nothing to say about that. So they missed the chance, mostly because of a tactic which worked against Liverpool at home, but didn't work against Newcastle.
Shaka, Newcastle did make hard work of seeing out that win in the second half.
They did. Got the start that they wanted, the early Tonali goal. The crowd were up for it, and talking about this game yesterday, we felt that the St. James's Park crowd would play a part, and that's certainly how it seemed, at the very least in the first half. But then, even with the 10 men, and Frank's right, Chelsea were far better than Newcastle in the second half. Far better. And even before we get into the second half, after the Tonali goal, I can't really remember Sanchez making a save. Newcastle were the better of the two teams, but I don't remember Sanchez doing anything at all. The highlight would stand that up. From then on in, I thought Chelsea were easily the better of the two teams, even with the 10 men. You saw Nick Pope and the role that he had to play, and you just wondered. And here's the concern for me. Even during this first half, even when Newcastle were on top and playing the better football, you saw absolutely nothing of Alexander Isak. And that, for me, that almost stood out, how absent he was. And I'm not questioning Isak, his talent, his importance to this team. I see that more in praise of Chelsea, their defensive organization, Maresca's game plan, because they simply nullified Newcastle's attack in that regard. And but for that early kidney punch from Sandro Tonali, we could be having a very different conversation here. To credit to Chelsea, they head back south, kind of wondering how they leave St. James's Park with nothing. Because for much of it, I think they were better. At the absolute least, deserved a point.
Could Isak have done more, Stevie?
I don't think so. No.
I think Chelsea and Maresca set up well. I say that in praise of Chelsea and Maresca, as opposed to a criticism of Isak.
Yeah, but like all centre forwards, if you don't get him the ball, then how's he supposed to do anything in the game? And they didn't do it. In the last 2 or 3 games, they've almost become a team that just want to not lose anything. Newcastle, and completely and totally, seemingly are relying on counter-attacking. Even before the red card for Jackson, they were just, it was really a load of counter-attacking at home with that crowd behind you. And if you're going to do that and you're going to isolate Isak up front, then that's why you don't see him doing anything.
What did you make of all of this, Stevie? Because the initial thought was obviously there was that miscommunication and the mix-up at the end, but then it felt as though frustrations were boiling over because of the battle that we're seeing for European football here and because of conceding late on from Forest to a relegated team.
Right. Well, I think miscommunication is the wrong word. There's no question that the physio gave the thumbs up, and I don't care what part of the planet you're from. If somebody does that, that's good. So there's not really a miscommunication. You've got somebody who's not done his job properly, and that's the physio. The bottom line is the physio's job in that situation is to figure out whether the guy can play on or not. Not ask him if he's okay or what would you like to do. You do certain tests, whatever it may be, to where the injury is, to figure out where, in your professional opinion, whether the player should carry on or not. And he obviously didn't do his job properly. And that's the bare bones of it. And the accountability on him will come. In terms of the owner coming on the field, it's every single manager, coaches. It's just a nightmare. When you've got a guy, and don't think this is just a one-off, because you know behind the scenes, he's in his ear, asking why he's doing this, what are you doing this for, sticking his nose in where it doesn't. Listen, if he's got a big ship in the middle of the ocean, a shipping container, then you know what? Absolutely get involved, because that's what he knows. But don't go on a football field and start sticking your nose in and try and go to a guy in Nuno who's got you from relegation candidates to possible Champions League candidates and start questioning them. It's every manager's nightmare that you get an owner or a chairman or whoever it is who sticks the beak in where it doesn't need to be. And I'm not saying that as an owner or a chairman or whatever it is, you don't ask questions, but you don't run on the field and start doing that right there and then. Just an absolute no-no.
Well, there's a time and a place, right, Shaka?
Absolutely. All owners ask questions of their managers. Stevie knows that. But there's a place for that. There's a boardroom for that, or wherever it may be. There's a time for that, whether it's right after the game, the afternoon after the game, whether it's the Monday, whatever it may be. It's not on the pitch, on the final whistle. And I think what that does is it really strips Nuno Espirito Santo of any kind of gravitas, of his authority on the field. And that, for me, I think can be critical in terms of Forest, what happens for the rest of the season. Because if all of a sudden him doing that has the players questioning Nuno's authority within the club setup, then you're already on a slippery slope. More to the point, Nottingham Forest still have an awful lot to play for here. Nottingham Forest have to go to West Ham next. And then the final game of the season is right back there against Chelsea for all the marbles. And now you have a manager who's been kind of publicly dragged in this way. And I know it's a physio who's at fault, but the physio is part of that backroom staff that the manager oversees. So the owner coming on to the park and even remonstrating with the physio, or to what we just saw with the manager as he did, I think just kind of stripped some of all of their authority and is negatively impacts that dressing room and negatively impacts what's to come in the next 2 weeks.
And obviously it is, as Shaka mentioned, very tight and very tense in those final stages. So you know where we are now. Frank, we're here to talk about the top 5 races. We do so often these days on this show. What are your thoughts on how it's going to finish now with what you've seen today?
Well, you have to look at the schedule. And if we start with Newcastle, they will have to play at the Emirates against Arsenal. And Arsenal is going to play the last game. They have to play at home, so they want to win. And Newcastle, the last time they came to the Emirates, they won. I think it was a cup game. And they want to show to their fans that they have pride. So I don't see Newcastle winning that game. I expect Chelsea to win against Manchester United, according to the performances that I saw from those two teams today. And it's going to be a fight between Nottingham and Chelsea after. I don't forget Aston Villa. I think the villains can be part of the battle, and I see them coming into the first 5 spots. And I'm sorry for Shaka, the mayor of Newcastle. I want to believe that Chelsea is going to do better than Newcastle the last 2 games, because according to what I saw today, I think Newcastle is getting tired. So I go for the 3 at front, which are Liverpool, Arsenal, and Manchester City, and I will add Aston Villa and Chelsea.
It is that last game, Nottingham Forest against Chelsea as well. That is tense.
To Frank's point, and I get it, I think the top 4 as is right now stays our top 4. While, yes, Newcastle does have to go down to Arsenal, they then finish off the season at home to Everton. Everton their season's over. Listen, I've been there when you've kind of been in a relegation dogfight and you drag yourself out of it. That last game of the season is one that you just want over with. So I think it's as good a time for a team like Newcastle to be playing with all at stake for them to be playing a team like Everton with nothing at stake. So I think that top four stays. It then comes down to 1 from 3. Nottingham Forest and Chelsea playing the last game of the season, as I mentioned. Aston Villa have won 7 of their last 8 league games. They only lost 2-1 to Manchester City in that 8. Aston Villa now have to go away to Spurs right before the Europa League final, and then they close out at home to Manchester United right after the Europa League final. And you just wonder how both those teams, and you saw how both those teams performed today, how both those teams, with their entire season at stake on that Europa League final, what are Spurs going to be like going into it? If whatever comes of it, whether Manchester United wins or loses, what are they going to be like coming out of it? And again, if you're Aston Villa, while on paper that might seem the most difficult of the run-ins, that's a perfect time to be playing both those clubs. So now all of a sudden you really have this Chelsea-Nottingham Forest game with all the marbles at stake. I am leaning Chelsea because I think, despite the loss today, I thought they were really good. So they get the result that they need against Nottingham Forest. They do that. Regardless of what Aston Villa does, Chelsea gets into the top 5.
Chelsea have lost 6 of their last 9 away, and only Leicester and Southampton have a worst record in that period.
Yep.
That's not helping them.
No. In fact, Chelsea Forest might mean nothing. Aston Villa are going to win the last 2 games.
I think so too.
Aston Villa are going to win the last 2 games. And if Aston Villa, and unless Chelsea win the last 2 games, then they're not going to qualify. And I don't think they will. So I absolutely think Aston Villa are going to join what is the top 4 right now and get that 5th spot.